Hi friends, I'm Dadi. Welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be doing my October wrap-up. So in the month of October I managed to read 14 books, which how? Okay. Anyway, I did pretty good with my October reading goals. I didn't accomplish all of them, but I knew that was a possibility going in. But like I said in that video, it's okay that I didn't finish the entire list. This is not a strict TBR that I need to follow. This is just to guide me through my reading experience for the month. And it's like, okay, if I don't finish the entire list, to the point that I posted my November reading goals last week, and I'm already kind of thinking about throwing that list out because I'm kind of going through a reading slump at the moment, and I'm just like, I don't really want to read any of the books on the list right now, so I'm considering just throwing the list out and doing whatever the hell I want. This is not about that. This video is not about that. I'm just rambling as per usual. So I'm just gonna get into the books that I read in October. So let's get started. The first book that I read in October was The Forbidden Game, The Kill by L.J. Smith. The Kill is the final book in the Forbidden Game trilogy. I started this trilogy around March or April, something like that. And this book was in my list of books I need to read in 2020. And so I'm finally glad to be done with it. I read the first one and I really loved it. I think I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was so good. And then the second one, which is The Chase, was kind of disappointing as a sequel. It just, nothing much happened. It was kind of a filler book. We could have done without it. And I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. And then The Kill, which is the one I read this month, I rated it a 3 out of 5 stars. And it was okay. It was better than The Chase, I have to say. It was much better than The Chase. Much more happened. It was much more suspenseful, but still not as good as The Hunter. And I have to say, one of the things that I really liked about The Hunter was that it went through with the stakes that it set up. So, major spoiler alert, one of Jenny's friends, Summer, dies in The Hunter midway through the book. And I thought that was great because there were set up stakes and the book went through with them. It killed one of the core group of friends, which I thought was fantastic. But then The Kill decides to undo that and revive her for some goddamn reason. And I just thought that was a bit of a cop-out, because if you've been watching me long enough, you know that I hate the resurrection trope. And also because it goes against the stakes that the book itself set up. So yeah, that was super disappointing. The same criticism that I had about The Chase, in which Julian, which is our main villain, is barely in this book. He pops up every once in a while and he comes in at the end to sacrifice himself for Jenny and her friends. And that's it. And I thought that was so fucking ridiculous. First of all, I love a villain, so I was rooting for him from the beginning. And The Hunter made it seem like in the end Jenny would end up with Julian, which I was so psyched about because it is very rare when the main character ends up with the villain, and I love that. But the entire series, it seems to me like the writer was L.J. Smith was like, yes, the main girl is gonna end up with the villain and it's gonna be great, but then someone put it into her head that that shouldn't be that way, and she just spent 2 books backtracking on what she'd established in the first book. I was just disappointed. Like I said, it was still better than The Chase. More things happened. It was more exciting. I was engaged with it for far longer than I was with The Chase. But still, I was disappointed, and if I ever reread any part of the series, it will definitely be The Hunter, because it is the only good part of the series. So that has been my mini rant on that, and let's just move on. Next book that I finished in October was Macbeth by William Shakespeare. I read this for my Shakespeare class at university. I actually quite enjoyed Macbeth. I had to write a paper on it, and I gotta say, I quite enjoyed it. This was a reread for me, but the last time I read it, I was in high school, so this was like five years ago. So it was nice to get into a reread with so much time in between, because there were things that I hadn't really noticed the first time, and also just because like I was a shithead in high school, I wasn't really paying attention to what I was reading. I paid attention as far as I needed to in order to get my work done. Anyway, unlike some of Shakespeare's other works, this was beautifully paced. Like, the pacing was amazing. It moved at just the right amount. It didn't drag. The characters were super enjoyable. I loved seeing like Macbeth's like descent into madness that was brought on by himself, basically, and how he was manipulated by his wife. Lady Macbeth is metal as fuck, and I vibe with that so hard. The supernatural elements that Shakespeare employs in this were fantastic. It was so well done. The use of the witches was amazing, especially because the witches never really make Macbeth do anything. He's just a dumb hoe. He's a himbo, and he just lets himself be manipulated into these situations. He's just like, he gets told a prophecy that he's gonna be king, and he just rolls with it, and instead of like letting things happen, he's just like, no, I want to be king now, so I'm gonna kill the king. And I'm like, you know, if you just wait, it'll happen probably. But he was like, nah, I just gotta kill the king, which I thought was great. He just like lets himself be manipulated into a corner for no goddamn reason, because the witches never threaten him in any way, shape, or form. He's just a dumb hoe. The next book I finished in October was Blaze Wrath Games by Amparo Ortiz. So I actually did a full vlog on this book that I'm gonna link. I think it goes here in the information bubble, that you can go check out. I rated this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It is about a magical world. I want to say it's sort of magical realism, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it's this world in which dragons exist and witches exist, and everybody knows about it. And there is this game called the Blaze Wrath Games, and it is played with dragons. And Lana, which is our main character, wants to be the runner of Team Puerto Rico. And so they're going to the Blaze Wrath Cup, and a whole bunch of mystery ensues and shenanigans all around. This was such a good book. I loved it. TLDR of my entire vlog was, I love the characters, I love the world building. I especially love the blend of English and Spanish. I've talked about this before on my channel, that I am a hoe for anytime that a writer blends English and Spanish together, because those are the two languages that I speak, and seeing them together in books just makes me really, really happy. So Amparo Ortiz did a fantastic job with this book. This is her debut novel, and I just can't wait to see what else she comes up with. Also, this is very appropriate, 2 days ago, I finally went to the bookstore to pick up my pre-order, because that's the type of month that I've been having, that I haven't been able to do that yet. And it's here, and she's so pretty, and she's hardcover, and also she's signed. Look at her, she's so gorgeous. And now I get to put my ARC and the final copy together on my bookshelf, and let me tell you, they look gorgeous. The next book that I finished in October was Harvest of Sighs by Sierra Sabone. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Look, I've been reading the series for some months now. The last one in the series comes out at the end of the month, and I wanted to be caught up. I gotta tell you, this was way better than Feast of Sighs. I hate talking about this book because it just makes, I could talk about it so easily when I'm not on camera, but when I'm on camera I just get shy. I don't know why. Anyway, look, this is trash romance, and I'm well aware of it, but it's my trash romance and I deeply enjoy it. And Feast of Sighs was lacking in sex, and Harvest of Sighs was definitely not. This book was really good. The narrative was excellent. The plot was great. The smut was awesome. But I do have to say, the ending of this book is ridiculously sad. Like, really, really sad. And I'm really hoping that Door of Bruises fixes all of this. Also, there was a plot point that I hated in Feast of Sparks that made me deduct the rating, and I think that this book hints at having that plot point resolved in the next book. And if that happens, if Door of Bruises solves that one plot point that I hate from Feast of Sparks, I will slap that book with an automatic 5 no matter what else happens in the book, and I have said my piece. That's all I'm gonna talk about this book. Goodbye. The 5th book that I finished in October was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This was also on my list of books to read in 2020. This was mostly on the list just for my pride. I needed to finish this because I was supposed to read it in high school. I never did, and I've tried to finish those books that I started in high school that I never did, especially the ones that were assigned. So this was mostly for my pride, and I managed it. I read the book, I listened to the audiobook, and I have to say it was okay. I rated it a 3 out of 5 stars. The thing is, I watched the Frankenstein play with Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller. So I watched the play while I was in university doing my bachelor's, and even though it has some differences from the book, it's pretty similar to the book. So, you know, there weren't really much surprises that I was expecting from Frankenstein, and it was just an okay read. It was 3 out of 5 stars. I can see why it's a classic, but you know, it's just fine. I had no strong emotions to it whatsoever. Am I really glad that I finally got this off my TBR? Yes. Yes, I am. So, you know, all good. The next book that I finished in October was Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. Look, I posted an entire Goodreads review about this that I will link down below. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars, and I think there were a lot of problems with the book. I enjoyed listening to it, and I finished it really quickly because I was like kind of hooked on the audiobook, but I think that had more to do with the audiobook than the narrative itself. And there were a lot of problems with this book. The characters were trash. The characters weren't great. The plot wasn't either. But I think my biggest problem with it were my expectations going in, because this book is marketed as being for fans of Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's specifically marketed that way. And really this has nothing in common with Red, White, and Royal Blue. Like, other than the fact that it's gay, British, and public perception of one of the main characters is involved. This lacks the heart, the emotion, the nuance that Red, White, and Royal Blue has. And I know not everybody feels the same about Red, White, and Royal Blue. I'm just talking about myself because this is one of my favorite books. And I found the Boyfriend Material lacking. It left me with no big takeaway, no strong emotions. I found the characters annoying. Luke, the main character, is whiny. He is not great at all. And his boyfriend Oliver isn't that great either. And all the characters feel super flat, and they all feel like caricatures of themselves. Like, the straight people in this book, the writer writes them and describes them in a way that it makes them feel like caricatures of like real people. Everybody who's straight in this book is made out to be like a dumb, personality-less person. Literally, they're all dumb. And I have to say that Luke's like group of queer friends, they all feel like they're just checking diversity boxes, which is not great. I had a lot of problems with this book that I like outline in my review. I don't normally write like long-winded Goodreads reviews, but I wrote a full thing for my reading journal because I do like write tiny like little reviews for my reading journal. And honestly, it like turned out so long that I was like, fuck it, I'll post it. And like, this book was just not a good time. Yeah, this book was not good. At least to me, it was a no. The next book that I finished in October was Memento by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is a Illumine novella. It takes place before the events of Illumine happen, and you get to see Aiden, which is the AI of Illumine, before the attack on Carenza damaged his systems. So you get a glimpse of how he was before he met Katie and before he started malfunctioning. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I really loved it. My only thing was like, and this isn't like a thing that I detracted stars for because this is more of a me thing than a book itself thing was that I didn't enjoy reading it on my Kindle. It's only available as an ebook, and I didn't enjoy reading it as a Kindle because Illuminate is a, I mean, I guess you could call it sort of like a graphic novel, but not in the traditional sense of with like drawings and stuff. It just, I mean, I have it right here. Like this. Illuminate is a very graphic book, right? So it has text conversations and drawings and stuff. And reading that on the Kindle is not a great experience. So I hope that they physically publish this someday so that I can put it on my shelves and like actually read it like that. Anyway, that's besides the point. Something that I really enjoyed about this book was that in such a short amount of time, the writers were able to develop Olivia, which is the main character of Memento, into like a tangible character. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the Illuminate files is that all the characters feel super real. The world feels lived in, characters feel very real, like they could be real people, and they are able to develop Olivia in a short amount of time, but they do it so well. They give her motivations, a complex backstory, and complex like thoughts as a character in 80 pages, which I thought was amazing. And especially because half of the time they're developing Aiden, so the fact that they are able to juggle the evolution of both of these characters in a short amount of time was fantastic. Like, hats off to you. All in all, this was a quick fun read. I loved being back in the Illuminate universe, even if it was just for a short while. Okay, so here's where things get a little tricky for the video, not for my month. 3 of the books that I need to talk about in this video I'm gonna gloss over. Not because I'm gonna talk about them later, it's just because I read them for university and I had no strong feelings about any of them that I really feel like sharing, and I'm not gonna talk bullshit for no reason. So anyway, next 2 books that I finished in October were City of Glass by Paul Auster and Ghosts by Paul Auster. Look, I read these for my crime lit class. If you've been following along for a while, you know that that class and I are not doing great. I am not enjoying most of the things that I'm reading for that class. I read these, I listened to the audiobook. It was fine. It was just deeply fine. I didn't really care about anything that was going on in either one of the books. Honestly, Ghosts, I can't remember half of the things that happened in it. Honestly, that's all I have to say. Next book that I finished in October was These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. This was on my November reading goals, and I'm really glad that I got to it. It gave me soft witchy vibes, which I was so happy about. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. It was really good. It was a cute, like, sapphic love story with some intrigue and some mystery and some magic, which I really liked. It was also sapphic, so there's that. One of the things I really loved about this book was the exploration of magic, the connection between magic and nature. The witches in these are elementals, so they're connected to the earth. I really liked how they established the magic system in this. It's not a super hard magic system, but there are barriers in place, there are limitations to power, there are rules set in place, so I thought that was good. And the rules and regulations and limitations that are set all made a lot of sense within the plot of the book. They didn't seem like they were just there for convenience. One of the things that I really loved about the book was that the main character's sexuality was already established, accepted. She was out, proud, everything. A lot of LGBT literature explores the coming out process, but I also love it when they explore post coming out, like first breakup, like having to move on, like dealing with your ex, all those sort of things that not a lot of LGBT literature deals with, but they definitely should, because life doesn't end at coming out, and especially because you end up coming out like a lot during your life. You constantly have to be coming out because you're constantly meeting new people, and you constantly have to be like, I'm gay, or I'm bi, or I'm like whatever. It's just, life doesn't end and begin at coming out. There's a lot of moments after you first do the big coming out that you still have to like live your life, So I really like the exploration of a first breakup and finding new love that was done in this book. The next book that I finished in October was Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. This was the October live show book, and I have thoughts. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, and I will explain. I wrote a very long Goodreads review about this because, again, sort of like with the boyfriend material, I sat down to write my journal review and just this whole long thing happened to the point that I had to rearrange like my journal aesthetics just so I could fit everything in. So let's get into it. I'm gonna also link the review down below. This was disappointing. I'm learning to set my expectations for Cassandra Clare as forgetting no plot and shitty character moments. But still, I thought Clockwork Angel did a lot of good things, and it set up a lot of really interesting things that it just did not go through at all in Clockwork Prince. This was a filler book, and I talked about this in the live show, but I think that trying to juggle 2 series at the same time did not help Cassandra Clare at all, because at the same time that she was writing the Infernal Devices, she was writing the other half of the Mortal Instruments, and like trying to juggle those 2 series at the same time, I don't think it did her any good, because it feels like she wasn't fully focused on this, and it feels like she was just trying to set up callbacks for the Mortal Instruments rather than finishing off the series that she'd already started. Look, this book has a 3rd-person POV that it could have used to make Mortmain, which is the main villain of this, much more compelling, but it misses that opportunity. He doesn't even show up in the entire book. They talk about him a lot, but he doesn't show up once in the book. And then we get a lot of half-assed character moments, from the love triangle between Will, Tessa, and Jem, which I don't jive with love triangles. I'm like, if you're gonna have a love triangle, just make it poly. It'll be better. So I don't jive with them, although this is one of the better love triangles that I've ever read because it is a full triangle. It's fully connected on all sides. No matter who makes a decision in this, everybody will be affected because all 3 of them have relationships with each other. It's not like the love triangle in Twilight, in which it was like Jacob, Bella, and Edward, but like Jacob and Edward had no relationship whatsoever, so it didn't like fully connect at the bottom. I'm not a fan of love triangles as is. And spoilers here, Will's curse was so dumb and so stupid, and the fact that he chose Jem as his parabatai because Jem was already dying was such a shit dick move, and I hated that. And it was just terrible. It was terrible. The curse came out of nowhere, and it just seems like it's there to excuse Will treating everybody like shit, and I hated that. It was just not good. The curse can go fuck itself. It's just, this whole book was just not great. All in all, I don't really see how Clockwork Princess is gonna get me to feel the emotions that everybody says you feel when you read Clockwork Princess. I'm very skeptical going into that, but I don't have to deal with that until December. So we'll see what happens then. Next book I finished was King Lear by William Shakespeare for my Shakespeare class. This was also a reread. I read this the first time junior year? I think junior year of my undergrad, for a class that I absolutely hated and a professor that I absolutely hated. So I really didn't pay much attention to it. When I was reading it, I just read enough so that I could write my response and be done with it. So this felt almost like a first reading because I did not remember shit that happened the first time around. It was a good experience, a good reading experience. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. Just like Macbeth, I wrote an essay for this for my class. I deeply enjoyed the character dynamics, especially like those of all the siblings. I don't have much to say about this book other than it was like a really good, enjoyable read. Yeah. Next book that I finished was Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman. Look, did I read it in September? Yes, I did. Did I reread it in October? Yes, I fucking did. Heartstopper has become my comfort series. Whenever I'm feeling down, I'm just like, let's just grab one of the volumes and read. I've needed a pick-me-up, and so I read Heartstopper. Sue me. 5 out of 5 still stands. It's still really good. I think out of the 3 volumes, this one might be my favorite. You really get to see Nick and Charlie develop their relationship in this, dealing with learning how to communicate. They're in their first relationship. They're 15 and 16, so obviously they're idiots. But yeah, they're learning how to have a relationship with each other and talk to each other about things. which, you know, it's great. And they're also dealing with coming out as a couple and Nick coming out publicly, and it's done super well. Since I started reading Alice Oseman's work, the word that I keep coming back to, or the expression that keeps coming back to me, is that she treats her characters very tenderly. She treats the reader, by extension, very tenderly. It's just everything's done with intention, but nothing is done out of malice. It's done with care and with understanding, and I really, really love that in her books. So yeah, this was a fantastic read, as per usual. I'm really happy I reread it. I'm just, no complaints from me. Okay, the last book that I read in October is also one that I'm gonna gloss over. I read it for my crime lit class. It was Mumbo Jumbo by Ishmael Reed. Very unremarkable read for me. Honestly, I read it to get it out of the way and because it was assigned for class. Did not leave a big impression, did not care at all about what was happening in it. It is what it is. I didn't want to do this video based on my reading goals list because I read some stuff that wasn't on it, but I thought that I'd do a quick little like rapid fire like roundup of like if I accomplished most of these goals or not, especially because I posted that video. Here we go. October reading goals. The first tier was university reads. I had 6 books that I needed to read. I read 5 of them. The one that I didn't get to was A Rage in Harlem by Chester Himes. I started the audiobook. I got about an hour in. I didn't really have time that week to get through the entire book before class, and honestly I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because based on the class discussion that we had, there was apparently some very like out there overt violence against women in it, and a lot of shit that I was just like not jiving with, and I really didn't want to get into it that week. So honestly, I'm kind of glad I DNF'd it. Not gonna go back to it at all. It's just gonna stay in one of those DNF'd books forever. On my must reads, it was Blaze Wrath Games and Clockwork Prince. I finished both of them. On my tier 1 reads, basically, it was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, Dracula by Bram Stoker, and Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. I only managed to read one of those, and it was Frankenstein. It was fine. I tried to listen to the audiobook for Dracula, but it was just something that I kind of needed to have the book right in front of me, or maybe just read it directly from the book. So I really didn't have time in the month to do it, so I'll probably get to it at some point later on in time. Maybe I'll read it next October. And Midnight Sun, I've already talked about the shame that it was, that I have to put it on another list. It's put again on the list for November, but now I have said that I maybe want to throw out my November list, so who knows when that will get read. It'll get done eventually, at some point in time. I just don't know when. My tier 2 reads were The Forbidden Game That Kill by L.J. Smith, What is Bewitching by Helen Oyeyemi, and Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I managed to read one of them in October, the other one I finished in November. So I read The Forbidden Game in October, but I finished Cemetery Boys in November, so I'll talk about that then. And then my tier 3 reads were These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling, Harvest of Sighs by Sierra Simone, and If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I managed to read both These Witches Don't Burn and Harvest of Sighs. So all in all, I did pretty good. So there were 17 books on my list of October reading goals, and I managed to read 11 books out of the entire list, and I think that's pretty good, honestly. The fact that I stuck to it and I was able to read a great majority of the list, pretty damn good if you ask me. So yeah, those have been all the books that I read in October and my thoughts on them. I also did a tiny little October reading goals wrap up, which was great. All in all, October, really great reading month. I have low hopes for November because it's already like November 12th and I haven't really read anything in the last 2 weeks. November is definitely gonna be a slow reading month, but October really was pretty freaking great. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you enjoyed that video. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, come yell at me in the comments. Be sure to support your local indie bookstore. I've been Tati and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye!